After looking at your mock FSAs and also reading some of your other essays, one of the things that stands out pretty clearly is that we need to go back and revisit how to cite text. Now, we very first learned about citing text back in September. And so if you could go ahead and open up your reader's notebook for me and find the page number 92920. Remember our dates, that's why we date the corner of our paper every time, because that is our page number. So 92920. You should have a glue in. You should have a small chart that we glued into our notebooks. 92920. May not be exactly on that date. That was the date I taught it to the other class. We might have been off a day or two. Danny? I'm so sorry. I would have hoped that your virtual teacher would have taught you this. I don't have these anymore because I gave them all out and they were glued in. So if you want to, a solution might be to open up your notebook and add them in for today. So if you can't find this chart, if it's fallen out of your writer's notebook because you didn't glue it in well, or if you didn't follow directions when we first did this, if you did not glue this chart into your notebook, then you might want to go ahead and jot this down. Just remember that I'm going to keep on teaching. And I'm looking and I'm seeing some people never put their dates on the corner of their, make sure you have the right notebook. Some people never put the dates on their pages, so you don't know where to find it. There's yours. Kendall found hers. There's yours. That's why we always put the date on the corner. I always start out by telling you to put the date on the corner of your page. What do you need, Emma? It's in the writer's journal. That's the one I asked you to take out. And again, if you can't find it, then you can just go ahead and start copying it. Now, I want you to stop and think. We did this lesson for the very first time in Writer's Workshop back in September. So that was when we first introduced citing evidence. And we started, if you remember the lesson, we talked about how when we first start out doing something new, it's always a good idea to have some kind of a sentence frame or a prompt or some kind of a scaffold to support us as we're learning something new. And the thing that we were learning new back at the end of September was how to cite our evidence. Now, these sentence frames are available in your notebook for you to use at any time. Obviously, you can't use them during the FSA, but like I always tell you, if you use the charts that you have often enough, you're going to be able to see them in your head even when they're not physically there. You will remember what they say. Okay, so just to review what a couple of these are, and I'm glad to see that those of you who still haven't found it are already starting to write it in your notebook. Now, what a sentence frame is it gives you the words and then the blanks for you to fill in the information. So we always try to introduce our evidence first, okay? We don't want to say, we don't want to give the evidence and say, this evidence comes from, because that takes all the power out of our words. It gives a different tone to our writing. We want it to be very forceful, very strong. We want to sound like an authority when we're writing. So in paragraph, blank, so you would give the number of the paragraph, comma, The author states, and then you can either quote directly or paraphrase. Now, paraphrase, remember, means you're putting it in your own words. So if you copy exactly the words of the author and you don't put quotes around it or you don't cite it, you're doing something we call plagiarizing. You are claiming that that knowledge, that statistic is yours, that you knew it. So you want to be careful about that. You don't want to fall into the trap of copying and plagiarizing. Okay, another way, in paragraph blank, you would put the number in there. The text sets have numbered paragraphs. If not, you can number the paragraphs. In paragraph blank of the text, and then you could go ahead and summarize, quote, paraphrase. Another one, according to the author of source. For example, the one for the mock essay had three sources, right? So you would have source 1, source 2, or source 3. According to the author of, and then you could insert the title of the article. Now, be careful. One of the things you need to demonstrate is your understanding of how a title is punctuated. If it's an article and you're underlining it, you're turning it into a book. So articles, as you should know, get quotation marks around them. You have a chart for that in your green packet. And again, always go back to your charts when you're working. If you're in doubt, the more you see them, the more you look at them, the more you'll remember them when they're not there. And when you're starting out with a difficult task, it's important for you to use all the tools that are available to you, and those reference charts are one of those tools. Based on the information in source 1 or source 2 or source 3, based on the information in the title of the article, in quotation marks, if you're referring to some kind of an illustration or a graphic, then you could just say the graphic shows or the illustration shows. Now, it is super, super important for you to remember to cite your evidence and to cite it properly, because if you don't remember to do that and to do it properly, you're not maximizing the potential of those 4 points in that column that you could get. Even more importantly, I think, because it's not about just getting a good score on the test, it's about becoming a good writer. And we already know that we're going to be writing essays all the way through high school, and if you choose to go to college, all the way through college. I had to write one to become a teacher. It was part of my test to become a certified teacher. So this is a skill you're going to use. You're going to use this for the rest of your life. So it's important to start to learn about it now. Okay, so this we talked about back at the end of September. Now what I'd like you to do is to go ahead and turn in your green packet and look at the chart that we used in January. And it looks, you have to turn your packet to landscape. There are two charts side by side that talk about quoting. Okay, we'll start on the left-hand side. And remember, the reason why we use quotes, the reason why we cite text evidence is to basically support our main idea. These are the details that support our main idea. These are the details that help to convince our reader, or to help our reader understand what we're talking about. So if it's an opinion, the evidence tries to convince them of your main idea. If you're writing informative, which is what we've been doing now, it helps to explain your main idea enough so that your reader understands what you're trying to say. So let's take a close look at this chart. One of the ways it talks about in the text it says, which is just like one of our sentence frames. You can also give a mini summary to set up the quote. I'll read that to you. You might not be able to see it unless you have it in front of you. It says, although many people consider snakes to be dangerous, it is important to be aware of how snakes support our ecosystem. They are important to the balance of nature. This is the quote. They are important to the balance of nature. They keep the population of rats, mice, and birds under control. So they began with a summary to introduce the quote, a mini summary, because you don't want to be quoting 3 sentences. Now, I want you to look at the way that they cited the evidence here. This is a specific style of citing evidence, and some of you have attempted it, but very few of you have been very successful with it. Now, that's good and bad. What's good is that you are aware that you need to cite your text evidence, but what's not so good is that you're not doing it effectively. So, congratulations if you know that you're supposed to be citing it, and if you're attempting it, if you're not quite successful, remember, practice is what we're going to do to get better at this. We're going to practice it. That's the only way we get better. Okay, another way, it says to tell who, from what text you are quoting, and what that character is trying to do, and then add it in their own words. Okay, we're going to skip that one just because we don't have that situation yet. We'll come back to it if we do. It says use just a few words in the middle of a sentence. The interpreter Carbonneau wasn't much help as his skills, quote unquote, were very poor, other than cooking buffalo sausage. Okay, so when we look at this, we can see that this came from an article, because it's a paragraph number, came from an article, and the author's last name was Erdich, and it was in paragraph 3. We can see PAR, period, is the abbreviation for paragraph. So far we've kind of reviewed at the beginning of the year, we learned that we introduced the text, the citation of the text can come at the very beginning of the sentence. But later on in the year, as we got better, hopefully, we also know that the citation can come at the end of the quote, at the end of the summary. But it's done in this way, in this style. It's not a sentence that says, this quote comes from, and then tells you where it comes from. Because that's not mature writing. When you write like that, it looks like, or sounds like, I should say, that it was an afterthought. Oh, I forgot to cite the text. Let me just jam this sentence in afterwards. Okay? All right, so let's shift over to this side. And this talks about quoting or paraphrasing the text again. It uses the same kind of style. All right, so it starts with the original text. And this is from Spiders. Later on, there's a mistake in here, but this one is from Spiders. In the past 25 years, the crocodiles, that's where the mistake is. It's not really from Spiders. It's from another one of Seymour Simon's books. He writes lots and lots of science books. In the past 25 years, the Crocodile Specialist Group has nurtured 16 of the 23 species of crocodilians back to increased population levels. This is a truly remarkable record. Okay, the important thing to know is that this was a book. Can you see how the title's italicized? Because it's done on the computer. If you were writing it with your pencil on paper, you would underline it. Okay, so if you were going to quote from it, you were going to quote from this book, The increase in 16 out of the 23 crocodilian species is, quote, truly a remarkable record. And then notice there's no period here, but right after the ending of the quotes, you have a parentheses, the author's last name, and when it's just a number, that's a page number. You're not putting PG or you're not writing page with a number. First of all, we don't do that when we have a text set because the paragraphs are numbered. And then the parentheses are closed, and then there's a period after the parentheses. You following me back there, Haley? Yeah. Okay, because I can only see the top of your head. All right, another way you can do this, notice the paraphrase, and notice the author's name is here. Simon notes the significance of the population increase in 16 out of 23 species. So when we go to cite the text, we don't have to put the author's name because the author's name was in the sentence. So in parentheses, we put 26. That's the page it came from because we know this is a book. Close the parentheses, period, afterwards. Okay. Then you can also, another way to do it, quote a phrase, mention the author. Simon states that the increase in 16 out of 23 crocodilian species is truly a remarkable record. And then after the end quote, open the parentheses, page number, close the parentheses, period. Now what we're going to see when we're dealing with the text set is more like this, with the paragraph number. Author's last name, paragraph number. If you don't know the author's name, then you can't use this. You have to introduce it from the front. In source 1, it states, and then you would go ahead and do it. You could put the paragraph at the end, but you don't know the author. Okay? Now, we initially looked at this chart in January. But when I saw your mock essays when we did the mock FSA, I found little to none citations, and those little citations that I did see, they were not properly executed. So we need to spend some time doing this and practicing. Now, I'd like to show you a few of the examples, and maybe together we can identify what is wrong with each of these. Now, nobody knows who these belong to, so you don't have to out yourself and admit that it's yours. I'd rather not have that distraction. But just know that these samples come directly from the essays that were written from students in here and students in the other homeroom. So in order to get better, we need to see, in order to know where we need to go, it's often easier to see where we should not go. Okay? A lot of times when we make a mistake in life, that's where we learn the most. Okay? So let's just take a look at the first one. Now this is a full paragraph, or the beginning of a paragraph. Actually, it is a full paragraph in somebody's writing. Which was a little bit scary to me anyway because it was so brief. But keep in mind, guys, this was the first time that we took a text set from reading to drafting in 2 hours. So I think that the time element kind of freaked a few people out, and you kind of lost your minds a little bit when you were doing your writing. But remember, we want to see what we should not do in order to remind us what we should be doing. It says, first, people fear coyotes, but not anymore. Coyotes don't come out a lot. That's why coyotes don't bother people. Some coyotes are scared to come out. Also, rangers told people what to do and not to do. People cannot feed coyotes. That's how people don't fear coyotes anymore. Now, don't focus on the writing. We're focusing on the citing. Okay? This person cited, they put in parentheses, page 1. Okay, so a couple of things that are wrong here. Obviously, we don't have what source it came from. This is an article, and the articles have paragraph numbers. So if this information came from, if this was following up a summary, but see, that's how people don't fear coyotes anymore, really is probably not part of the source. And I will tell you that this person did this throughout their essay. Every paragraph at the end, they gave a page number. Okay, so you need to make sure that you're introducing it. If you know the author, you can use this, but remember it's not a page number because it's an article. It's a paragraph, and remember the abbreviation for that is PAR. So if this came from an article and it was quoted or summary, right after, maybe right here, it might have had a parentheses. It might have said, I can't remember the person who wrote the article about the coyotes. It might have had their last name, and then it might have had PAR period, which is the paragraph, and then the number of the paragraph, not the page in the text set. And guys, I should be able to go to the paragraph that you list. I should be able to, if it's a quotation, I should find the exact words you've lifted from that paragraph. If it's a summary, I should be able to read that paragraph and see where you put that in your own words. So be careful. There's a reason why 40% of your score is about your evidence and your elaboration. That's where the power is in your essay. All right, let's look at the next one. This is not the beginning of a paragraph. You know this because it's not indented. For example, pigeons are descendants of rock doves. Rock doves lived in steep caves that bordered the ocean. Tall buildings resemble that steep cliff. So we have this in quotes from pigeons, right? And then we have this quote from Pigeons and People shows how pigeons and rock doves are related. Okay? Which is not so bad because it doesn't say this quote comes from, okay? One of the things, though, that we do want to point out is that there's no punctuation in the title of the article, which should be in quotation marks. The other thing is that, yes, this is a quote, but what part of the article did it come from? What paragraph? Okay, and we also know that if we're going to use a sentence to identify or cite a quote, we would like to do that before, to introduce it. That comes out more solidly. What I think happened here, this reminds me of the hook that we have, which is a quote. That's what that reminds me of. And I think that's what the person did, was that they kind of mirrored the quote hook that we have on our chart. Okay, so let's go ahead over here. And here's another example. This is from the beginning of a paragraph. Coyotes can affect us as we can affect them too. They come and play on the playground for the same reason we do. And then we have this. Now, if I went to that article, I should find somewhere in there where they talked about the coyotes going to the park for the same reason that people do. I don't know what that reason is because the person was kind of vague. And we won't even talk about the fact that we don't have a transitional phrase to begin the paragraph. But let's go over here again and notice, we do know the name of the author of this right here. It's not done properly. Remember, last name of the author, then PAR period, the paragraph number. Then the parentheses are closed. There shouldn't be a period here, just the period at the end. And guys, I know it sounds like some being picky, but that's the way they are. There are different styles of citing texts. And I'll tell you now, knowing what I know from having to take courses, which not even way back when I went to college, but like teachers have to take courses all the time in order to get recertified, that they require these to be done properly. And it is a major impact on your grade if you don't know how to do it. Okay, then we go. An urban park ranger says she has only seen 5 coyotes face-to-face in 13 years. Well, I know that that's a quote, but it's not quoted. It is cited, but again, it's cited incorrectly. You should never feed a coyote because they will think that all humans are nice, but they aren't. Most are, but not all. Some are hunting the coyotes, and they can try and hurt them, and that is not good. So let them be wild. Okay? We won't even talk about how that sounds like an opinion, how it doesn't have anything to do with the topic or the purpose or the focus. But again, pointing to the way it's cited, last name of the author, PAR period, and the paragraph number. If you don't have that information, if you can't do that, then that's where you use those sentence frames we looked at the very beginning. Okay, let's look at another one. First, in the text set, The Howl Next Door, coyotes can affect people's lives. Okay, using the title of the article correctly punctuated. One example is coyotes are living in cities or outside of cities, so watch out for coyotes in the cities. I really don't think, and I actually know because I went back to check, it's actually not the words that are in the article. So the person quoted them, and I don't know if they got nervous, if they lost their place where they were copying, if they thought they were copying word for word, but they didn't. But again, notice the way that they tried to cite the evidence. Paragraph 1, and then the author's first name. Okay, I don't know about you, but if I were to go back, if I read your essay, and I went back and I wanted to find the article and I didn't have the text set, and I was looking for an article by Julie, I would have a very hard time finding it because Julie is someone's first name. All right? So that's why, and I'm going to take 2 points because your mask is not over your nose. So that's why we have to follow the pattern. Remember, readers expect a certain format. They're comfortable with it. They know what it means. That's why we need to give them what they're comfortable with, what they know. All right, let's look at this next one. This one was a little scary. First in S2P4, or I should say S1P4, okay, which, again, the author realized that they needed to cite the text evidence, which is good. However, they didn't do it effectively. So it should be written out. In source 1, paragraph 4, or in paragraph 4 of source 1, it should be written out. It states, if coyotes live there, it's because parks have become cleaner and safer environments. Okay? And they forgot the end quote there. So don't be tempted to take a shortcut and abbreviate like that because it really is not an effective way to cite. It's just like somebody in here, and I'm not going to out you, instead of writing the word because, they write B/C. And even though I have conferenced with them over and over again and told them not to do that, to write the word out, they still continue to do that. Okay? It's not proper. You can do that in a text message, but you're not doing it in formal writing. Okay, let's look at this next one. Another example of this is in, open the quotes, World War II, a pigeon named G.I. Joe received a medal for his bravery. He carried an important message to the British troops when the communication system went down, close the quote. And again, in the parentheses, paragraph 10 of source 3. Well, we know that that is improper. That format is improper. If you mention the author in the quote, then you can just put PAR period 10. But you don't put source 3 in paragraph 10 of source 3 as your citation. And again, sometimes if you're doing that, it looks like you don't know what you're doing or that it was an afterthought. I already nodded to you that you could go. I'm sorry you didn't see me. Okay, let's go down here. For example, in the passage, The Howl Next Door, it states that people are working on trying to educate people. Again, parentheses, paragraph 3. What's wrong with that? Sean?
They don't have the last name of the author, and they didn't write PAR, period.
Okay, all right. What else is wrong? Jaden?
They forgot the parentheses.
What parentheses? They have parentheses here. Anybody see it? Danny? Okay, what do they do instead of putting quotation marks? Are you talking about the name of the article? Or are you talking about the quote? Okay, I'm not sure if there is a quote. If you have your, well, you don't have your mock because I have it. I'm not sure if it is a quote or not, but this is the title of the article. And they have it underlined. It's not a book. It's an article. It should be in quotation marks. Okay? And again, it might sound like it's picky, but repeated errors like this over and over and over again really hurt you. Because now you're not just talking about citing evidence, you're talking about that grammar and conventions, knowing how to do a title, knowing how to write a sentence, knowing how to punctuate, knowing how to spell. So now you're affecting 2 categories on the rubric. And every time you do something like that and then it becomes a pattern, your writing just becomes weaker and weaker. And then we have this last one. That was, quote, some pigeons are particularly special to people because they can be trained as messengers, unquote. This evidence was from paragraph 10, passage 3. Okay? Emma, what would you like to say about that? No, it doesn't. Quotation marks don't go there. Can you make it with your hands? Yes, parentheses. Okay, so, but it's not just that. What about that sentence? This evidence was from paragraph 10, source 3, or passage 3. Okay, so again, stating that after you've had that evidence in there, it just makes your writing really weak. Okay, and I get it. You had a time situation, but again, we have to stop. We have to say, this is what we're doing. We know what we should be doing. We have the charts in our possession in front of us to do it. We've got to get this right now so that we can do it the next time we have a timed prompt, which is going to come up. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you take out your polar bears text set. You're going to choose one of your main ideas, and you're going to write a body paragraph on your piece of notebook paper. You can choose whether it's your first body paragraph, your second body paragraph, or your third body paragraph. But all you're doing today is you are writing your body paragraph. You can wait to go to the bathroom until you finish with when I finish with the directions, then you can go to the bathroom, Jaden, and then Sean, you can go afterwards. Yes, sir. What about your American Revolution? Have you finished that? Then I'll get you your mock FSA and you can rewrite one of your paragraphs from your mock FSA. Okay, just give me a second, I'll go get it for you. All right, you can go after Sean. There's a long line of bathrooms. Eliana, may I help you?
I don't have the revolutionary war.
See, you were in the bathroom, so you didn't hear me. I asked you to take out the polar bears. That's fine. So take out polar bears. You should already have it planned. Choosing one of your main ideas. You're writing a body paragraph for that main idea. And remember what I want to see. I want to see you properly cite your text evidence. I want to see the proper format of a body paragraph. So grab that checklist that's in your binder as well. When you're finished, turn it into the basket so that I can read it and give you feedback. And if you finish before dismissal, which I hope you will because we have 35 minutes till dismissal, it shouldn't take you that long to write a body paragraph. If you finish before, turn it in and then take out a book to read. Just give me a minute, Octavian, and I will get you your mark.